This is Sports Takes with Nate Skates. No spin, just straight sports. Well, friends, today we're going to say goodbye to something you and I have loved very much. Today we're going to say goodbye to something that brought a lot of people a lot of happiness, a lot of joy, a range of emotions. We're going to say goodbye to the 2025 college football season. And I know that's going to be hard for all of you. It's going to be hard for me. But if you just stick with me, we'll get through it together. Man, seems like it was just August, and the 2025 season was young, full of hope, full of life for so many teams. And here we are, putting it to rest. A little bit of fun on today's episode of the Sports Takes with Nate Skates podcast. Just remember, at least we'll have basketball, at least we'll have baseball to help us get through the dark times, the times before August, when college football, like Frosty the Snowman in December, will return to bring us happiness and joy and rage. But before we say goodbye to the 2025 season, I want to have a little fun at my own expense on today's episode. I told you when I began the show that part of why I wanted to do this show was because I was so tired of seeing hot takes from media pundits that were egregiously wrong. We've heard a couple of those recently, haven't we? Cam Newton's getting really good at those. So I wanted to give you takes that were from a fan who actually watched college football, and hopefully I had some idea what I was talking about. But as sports has taught me many times over, no matter how dedicated a fan you are very liable. I am very prone to making really bad takes. And though I've been watching college football like an addict since I was a child, I made some very bad takes. No, I did not say DJ Lagway would win the Heisman. No, I did not say Florida would be a playoff team, or Arch Manning would be the best quarterback ever, or that Penn State would be a top 2 team, like many of those in the media said. But I made plenty of my own bad takes before the season started. So today I'm going to share a few of those with you. Big swing and a misses I had before the season and early in the season before I even started this show. Then we might poke a little fun at some of the takes I had on the show. But I want to start with the one that has been eating at me all season long, that I am ready to get this off my chest and confess my terrible take that I made to start the season. So earlier in the year, before the season got started, I and my dad were discussing a lot of the preseason predictions, talking about the SEC network's predictions on, or various SEC network pundits' predictions on their preview shows. Talked about Josh Pate, some of his previews, some of these other guys who are well known and what they thought of the teams. And we were discussing how we thought, as per usual, they were too high on several of the teams. And one of the teams that I really felt like people were too high on was Oklahoma. People were projecting Oklahoma to win, 8, 9, 10 games, somewhere in there, generally probably 8 to 9 games. I thought that was way too high. I have a direct quote, a text message I sent my dad, that I'm going to read a little bit of it to you guys, so you can see just how wrong I got Oklahoma. So I sent a text saying, I want to go on record here and say I am very low on Oklahoma's head coach. That would be Brent Venebales. I think they will be a 6 or 7 win team again. 8 is ceiling. Then I doubled down and made it worse. He, being Brent Venebales, took a team that was a top team every year but couldn't play defense to a bad team who still couldn't play defense but also couldn't score. Yes, I fully understood that part of Oklahoma's problem in 2024 was they had, 6 wide receivers hurt? I mean, basically the entire wide receiving core was injured. Kind of hard to move the ball and have a successful offense when every wide receiver basically you have on the team is injured. I understood that. But in the Venebales tenure, the offenses we had seen at Oklahoma in the past, that was gone. And we had not really seen a drastic defensive improvement. You could argue it was a better defense than what they had, but it would be hard to be any worse. So the offense, receivers injured or not, was very bad. I did not expect Oklahoma to have the year that they had this season. Now, the offense was still not great. Let's look at these offensive stats. They were 57th in passing yards per game, 112th in rushing per game, 90th in total offense, 78th in scoring, 79th in passing efficiency. So they still weren't a good offense. However, where I really got it egregiously wrong was the defense. They were 3rd in rushing defense this season, 32nd in passing defense, 6th in total defense, 7th in scoring defense, and 1st in sacks. So I was way off. I mean, it would be hard to be much more off than what I was about a team going into the season. And I was just dead wrong about Brent Venables. Now, they went 10-3 this year, had the 24-13 win over Michigan, at Michigan. So they had made it to the playoff, beat Alabama in the regular season, then lost the close game in the playoff. When John Mateer was playing banged up, they got pummeled by their rival Texas. They lost to Ole Miss during the regular season, who I have Ole Miss ranked as the 3rd best team in the country at the end of the season. But, I mean, there weren't a lot of challenges you saw on the schedule. Oklahoma really used that defense to win virtually all of their games. And so most of their games were very close wins. And there were some times that defense maybe didn't play up to what the stats say. However, by and large, I mean, this was a much better year than what I predicted. I mean, I was looking at 6-7 wins, and whether they had the toughest SEC schedule or not, I mean, they far exceeded my expectations. And while I don't think the coaching staff had their best game in the playoff against Alabama, I was obviously dead wrong about Venables. I thought Venables was going to be a completely failed head coach at Oklahoma going into this year, and I thought he probably wouldn't even be there much longer. So I don't know what will happen in the future. I don't know if he will continue to improve on this or not, but he's obviously got more time now. He definitely isn't getting fired, and so I was dead wrong. So my apologies to Venables, Oklahoma, the fan base. Good job. Good job on the season. Next, one of my big whiffs was Clemson. Okay, so the whiff I had with Clemson was, I thought with Cade Klubnik back and following the performance they had towards the end of the year, the ACC championship game against SMU, how they played in the playoff, I thought that Clemson was going to have a very good offense this year. I thought they would be a better team than what they had last year. This has been a few years now that Clemson's been a little bit down from what people had grown to expect from Clemson. I don't know that if I thought they were going to be a national championship team or anything like that. I definitely thought they would be in the conversation for the playoffs. I would have had them ranked very high going into the season, and I expected them to win, 9, 10, 11 games. And that is not how the season went at all. Clemson went 7-6. And as for that offense that I thought would be so good, the best part about their offense was that they were 22nd in passing yards per game. They're 105th in rushing yards per game, 71st in points per game, 55th in passing efficiency, and 113th in third down conversion rate. Now, the defense, they had the 16th rated rushing defense, but the 118th rated passing defense. Had the 55th total defense. A lot of Clemson's losses were close losses. It's not like they were getting blown out in a lot of these games, but they were games that they should have won if based off what you would have expected from Clemson. It's hard to really say with the Syracuse loss, which looks really bad right now. Well, Syracuse's quarterback was healthy at that time, and that was a little bit different team. With him healthy, that was a good game. That Syracuse quarterback was playing excellent that game. So how bad was that loss? We don't know. The Georgia Tech loss, Georgia Tech ended up being a pretty good team. But still, I mean, this was just not a great year for Clemson. And now, here's another one that I whiffed on in a similar but somewhat different way. I thought that LSU would have a very good offense. In the 2024 season, LSU had an excellent offense. Excellent passing offense with Garrett Nussmeier at quarterback. I didn't really think LSU was a national championship team like a lot of people thought. I thought they were probably going to be around a 9 or a 10 win team. But I thought that their offense, especially after adding Barryon Brown from Kentucky, I thought they were going to be scary good throwing the ball. And I thought that Garrett Nussmeier was going to be, a very high first round draft pick following this season. But I did think they would have a subpar defense again, as they had in 2024. I just kind of thought that was the way the Brian Kelly LSU tenure was going. Really good, high-powered offense, really bad defense. Dead wrong. All of that was dead wrong. LSU was 61st in passing yards, 85th in red zone offense, 95th in third down conversions, 124th in rushing offense, 101st in scoring. Then on defense, they were 42nd in passing defense, 32nd in rushing, tied for 14th in red zone defense, 27th in total defense, 23rd in scoring defense. Went 7-6 and fired Brian Kelly. So instead of a top-level offense and a bad defense, like I expected, they had a bad offense and a pretty good defense. I remember after the Clemson game, that was the opening game of the season, talked to my brother-in-law about the game afterwards, and I said, well, what I was so shocked by was I was expecting two really good offenses and not really great defense, and what we got in the game was a complete opposite. And that kind of leads me into a few of the other things. I don't put a lot of stock in early season rankings. I don't even want to make rankings before a season. You have no idea what you are getting with these teams until you've seen them on the field. However, I find that it's even hard to rank them accurately the first few games of the season. When I look back at some of my rankings earlier in the season, some of them were pretty good, pretty spot on to what they ended up being in my final rankings. Some of them were terrible. And so when I didn't make my first rankings until after week 3. And when I look at my first few rankings, I mean, I've got LSU, Florida State, Tennessee in the top 10. I mean, Florida State beats Alabama, looks really good the first 2 or 3 games of the season. I thought those were top 10 caliber teams because you're having to base that off of what you've seen before, what the talent level is, what do they look like in those early games. That just did not work out at all. Florida State ended up being a very disappointing team. LSU and Tennessee were both 7-8 win teams. I also had Auburn. After the first few games of the season, Auburn was exceeding my expectations, and I put Auburn in the rankings. I had Missouri in the rankings, which a lot of people had Missouri ranked. That wasn't any big surprise there. After the Arizona State game, I had Mississippi State ranked for a week or so. So those were obviously ones that just totally wrong. Some of those teams were good teams as far as they gave a lot of teams a fight, but their records did not turn out well. Mississippi State, 5-win team. These teams did not continue to play the way they looked like they were going to be playing early in the season. So those were some of my really big whiffs going into the season. Texas A&M was another one. I kind of expected, I liked Mike Elko going into the season. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a very good coach. I thought he was a very good coach going into the season. I kind of expected Texas A&M to be about where they had been being, maybe slightly better. For me, Texas A&M was one of these, I prove it. I need to see it on the field, and then I'll believe it. So I had Texas A&M as probably an 8 to 9 win team going into the year. So they exceeded that. They did better than that. Yes, they had one of the weakest SEC schedules. Still lost to Texas. Lost in the first round of the playoff. I've got Texas A&M as a top 10 team to end the season. Got Texas A&M at 6. They had a much better year than I expected, and I said prove it on the field, and they did. Now, they need to do a better job of taking care of the football going into next year. We'll see whether this carries over into a better year next year. But they've shaken the perennial 8-9 win team thing. They've exceeded that. So I will remember that going forward. Now, to really wrap up the 2025 college football season, we would have to address the issues with NIL, the transfer portal, tampering, all those sorts of things. And I am going to talk about that a little bit here in a minute when I talk about college basketball and the situation going on there. Obviously, you had Dabo Swinney come out and accuse Pete Golding and Ole Miss of tampering with one of his players. There's a lot of that type of thing going around, a lot of accusations. I don't want to get into a lot of that right now, and I have talked about that some on the show. The short of it is we've got to rein in NIL, the transfer portal, the schedules need to be changed. There's so many things about this that have to be changed. But the only thing I really want to address right now on this part of the show is, I don't know if you saw this, there has been a list that has come out, the one I'm looking at is from Fox Sports, about college football's top 10 most impactful transfer players of the 2025 season. Let me read the list to you. So at number 10, you have Keelan Marion, wide receiver from Miami. He transferred in from BYU. He had a good year, made some big plays in the college football playoff. Number 9, KC Concepcion. He's kind of an all-purpose wide receiver for Texas A&M who transferred in from NC State. The show had 919 yards, 9 touchdowns. He was a good kick and punt returner. Number 8, Roman Hemby, running back for Indiana, who transferred in from Maryland. He ended up with 230 carries, 1,120 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Number 7, Kejuan Lacey, running back for Ole Miss. We talked about Lacey on here. He had 306 carries, 1,567 yards, and 24 touchdowns. Ole Miss got him from Missouri. He played very well in the playoff. 33 carries, 201 yards, 3 touchdowns. Number 6 is Pat Coogan, the center for Indiana, who transferred in from Notre Dame. He won the offensive MVP of the Rose Bowl. Never happens. You never have an offensive lineman win an award like that. So he was instrumental in Indiana's offensive success, their great offensive line, on their way to win the national championship. Number 5, Keontae Scott, defensive back, Miami. Talked about him on here. He transferred in from Auburn. 64 tackles, 5 sacks, 2 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, 2 touchdowns. He had a huge playoff, especially against Texas A&M and Ohio State. Had the pick 6 against Ohio State. Number 4, David Bailey, one of the better defensive players in all of college football this year for Texas Tech, transferred in from Stanford. Had 81 pressures, 14.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. Number 3, Carson Beck, transferred into Miami from Georgia. He had 3,813 yards, 30 touchdowns, nearly led Miami to a national championship. Number 2, Trinidad Chambliss, quarterback for Ole Miss, transferred in from Division II Ferris State to Ole Miss, had 3,937 yards, 22 touchdowns to just 3 interceptions, was also a great running threat, had a huge season, took Ole Miss to the best season they've had in decades by far. And then number 1, no surprise here, Fernando Mendoza, quarterback, Indiana, who transferred in from Cal, won the Heisman Trophy, won a national championship. What else are you going to say? I've talked about a lot of these players on the show several times. And the reason I'm reading this to you is these were some of the biggest players to shape college football this season. I mean, we're looking at these guys. These were all playoff teams. Miami, Texas A&M, Indiana, Ole Miss, Texas Tech. These were all playoff teams, and these were all instrumental players on those playoff teams. It was not that long ago that there weren't very many transfer players, back when guys had to sit out a year unless you were a graduate transfer and there wasn't all this NIL going around and everything. Transfers were pretty rare, and whether or not they made a big impact, I mean, was kind of up in the air. And you see that now with the number of transfers. There's a lot of transfers who don't make a big impact. However, what I mean, these were some of the biggest performers in all of football. And these 10 guys were transfers. And I mean, you've got the Heisman Trophy winner was a transfer. You've got the two quarterbacks leading their teams to the national championship game were transfers. And I say all that to say, this is the state of college sports. Season to season, the entire landscape of the sport can change. Whoever lands the right guy in the portal, and it's not necessarily who lands the highest rated transfer. Some of these guys were highly rated in the transfer portal. KC Concepcion was 18th overall. David Bailey was 12th overall. Carson Beck was 4th. And Fernando Mendoza was 22nd. However, a lot of these guys were not thought of as big portal grabs. Hemby was rated 236th. Keywan Lacey was rated 277th. Pat Coogan 138th. Keontae Scott was rated 715th. Trinidad Chambliss was lowest of them all, 843rd. The 843rd rated transfer player going into the season as the number 2 most impactful player. So it's not that you better sign whoever the biggest portal grab is, but portal players are shaping college football right now. You can completely transform your team grabbing a guy from a team that it didn't work out. And that goes against what we're used to in college football. It goes against what a lot of the coaches want. Dabo Swinney, Kirby Smart. That's not really what they want. And historically it has been stay and develop. And I still think that is a huge aspect of college sports. And I think more guys need to do that and not just leave if they don't get playtime. However, it is working out really well for a lot of players and a lot of teams to go to greener pastures, go somewhere where it works out better, go to a better team, get a fresh start, get a different coaching staff, whatever it is. But a lot of these players who have been relatively successful where they were at, I mean, Trinidad Chambliss, he's rated very low, but he's been very successful at Division II. He won a national championship at Division II, are finding big opportunities on bigger, better teams. And there's all manner of good and bad to that. I don't really want to debate that right here. Until the transfer portal gets limited, until NIL gets limited, it completely shapes the sport. What your team does in the transfer portal largely outweighs recruiting. And Indiana proved that this year. Indiana proved that. They got 3 guys on this list, on this top 10. Indiana didn't really build their team through recruiting. They built it through the transfer portal by and large, getting already established players. That's not to take away from their coaching. Coaching was phenomenal. The team was phenomenal. And it can be very difficult to get these transfers to come in and buy in and get the system quickly and all that. You have to get the right guys and you have to do a good job coaching. But it's just a different way of building the team. I think until NIL and the transfer portal are restricted. This is college football. You got to go find these guys. You got to go recruit the portal. There's a lot of money going around, and I don't think that's sustainable. I don't see how you can possibly keep doing this and keep paying these guys. And right now, it looks like to win a national championship. What did Ohio State do the previous season? What did Indiana and Miami do this year? What has Ole Miss done the last few years? Build through the transfer portal. Get quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, big playmakers in the transfer portal. I mean, even for Georgia, who takes less guys out of the portal, Zachariah Branch was enormous for Georgia this year. ATN was huge for Georgia the previous year. You got to go get some of these difference makers in the portal. Now, leaving college football behind, waving goodbye out the rearview mirror, we're going to college basketball. Been talking about college basketball pretty much every show in the latter half of the show. Now, going forward, probably be more college basketball toward the front of the show. So, SEC basketball keeps being totally unpredictable. Vanderbilt started 16-0, then lost 3 games in a row, 2 of them badly, then on Saturday beat Mississippi State 88-56. Auburn, Tennessee, Texas, Arkansas, these are all teams that are completely different each game. Florida, who had looked like the class of the SEC over the last few weeks, lost a close game to Auburn at home Saturday. These teams are flawed, but they're all really good. You just have no idea what's going to happen from game to game. So let's talk about, first we're talking about Georgia. So during the week, Georgia went on the road to Missouri. Missouri is a very good team at home. This game was a classic all the way through, an absolute battle. The first half, the offenses were having a really hard time getting much going. You had good defense. The second half, there were a lot of lead changes, a lot of battling in the paint. But I want to focus on a couple of sequences that explain how Georgia won this game. I've mentioned Georgia's rebounding a lot, especially offensive rebounds, being a problem for the Dogs. Not in this game. One sequence in particular I wanted to bring up that really illustrated how Georgia was playing in this game. Georgia got the ball with 3 minutes, 42 seconds left in the game. They're up 2 points. So Blue Cane goes in, tries a reverse layup with about 3:16 left. Ball hits the rim. Blue Cane gets his own rebound, hits it back out. This starts a series of offensive rebounds for Georgia. Georgia missed another shot, got the rebound. Smurf Millender missed a floater close to the basket, got his own rebound. Blue Cane missed a 3. Surreal got the rebound, then gets fouled. Georgia had the ball for over 1 full minute of game. Georgia had 5 possessions in one. For Georgia to have 5 possessions in a row is a sign of how hard they were fighting, how bad they wanted the game. This is not a good offensive rebounding team. We've expressed that. But they were fighting so hard. Yes, they were missing the shots. The offense just wasn't really there. But they were getting those rebounds. I mean, Georgia ended the game with 44 rebounds to Missouri's 39, 19 offensive rebounds where Missouri had 15. Georgia was also 18 for 21 on free throws compared to 11 for 12 for Missouri. But the other part of the game I want to talk about is Smurf Millender. Towards the end of the second half, Millender just took over. And it was Millender who had a clutch 3 with 1 minute 50 seconds left to go up 4 points. Then, after Georgia loses that lead, it was Millender who Georgia gave the ball with about 9 seconds left, down 72-71. Millender takes it around, has Sean Phillips Jr. on him, who is 7 feet tall, gets around him, gets fouled, hits the layup, hits the free throw. That's what won the game. I mean, he was just absolutely ice water in his veins, clutch, all through the second halves. And Georgia had several players step up. Millender had 18 points, 5 of 8 shooting, 3 for 4 on threes. He had 4 rebounds. Surreal had 11 points, 8 rebounds, 3 blocks. Jeremiah Wilkinson had 14 points. Cannon Catchings had 12 points, 7 rebounds, 3 steals. Blue Kane had 8 points, 10 rebounds, led the Dogs, and 4 assists. Justin Abson came off the bench, had 4 points, 6 rebounds. Georgia still had bad three-point shooting on the day, 28%, but they were willing to go inside some, then hit their free throws when they got fouled. This is kind of something I've been wanting Georgia to do more of. You've got Samto Surreal inside. Surreal's points came off free throws that day. This was a huge win for Georgia. However, Saturday against Texas was not a huge day for Georgia. This was not anything like the same type of game. The first half was very good. It was a hard-nosed, played more at a slower pace, which does not necessarily favor Georgia, but they were up 37-30. Georgia lost this game by 20 points, but they led for 49% of the game, and I think that shows how much the game flipped at halftime. It was like I was watching completely different teams after halftime. Georgia had been pretty aggressive, very physical in the first half, and had played pretty well. The second half, Texas was much more aggressive than Georgia. Georgia looked very passive. It was a very poor offensive performance in the second half. Very poor offensive performance. Very poor rebounding. Bad three-point shooting. Poor free throw shooting. It was just a very bad half for Georgia all the way around. Mike White said he thought the guys got emotional after they had some bad defensive plays and let that lead into taking bad shots. Georgia has been prone to taking bad shots and not hitting these threes. They are not a good three-point shooting team. Now, yes, Georgia is at its best when it is hitting some threes, but Georgia has struggled with shot selection, and at times it just kind of seems like Georgia just gets out of sync, gets a little emotional, and it was not good. I don't know what else to say about it. This was a team that only lost 3 games. 2 of the losses were in overtime. The Florida loss was a really bad matchup for Georgia, and you had Samto Surreal go out really early in the game. But that was the only game where Georgia really had gotten blown out. Early in the second half, I was thinking Georgia is not going to get blown out. Georgia is fighting. They're going to keep this close. No. Georgia was not going to fight and keep this close. I don't know what was going on. I really felt like, what am I watching here? I don't know what happened at halftime, but Texas came out and they looked like the team that has now beaten 4 ranked teams. Texas can be a very good team. Texas has beaten some very good teams. Texas beat Vanderbilt. When Texas is on, Texas can easily be a tournament team and could do some damage. Dalen Swain had 26 points. Tremont Mark had 23 for Texas. Georgia, Wilkinson led with 17 points. It was just a bad game for Georgia. Only had 25 rebounds and 11 assists. Had 13 turnovers. The fast break points were down for Georgia against Texas. They've been down for Georgia the last couple of games. Only had 7 fast break points against Texas. Georgia's offense, which had been the top scoring offense in college basketball all season, really been stifled lately. So Georgia's going to have to get that corrected. Transitioning to Kentucky. Cats have won 5 SEC games in a row after starting 0-2 in conference play. Kentucky is playing much better. Had big wins over Texas and Ole Miss this week. On the Texas game, Kentucky had 35 free throw shots, hit 30 of them. I think that the emergence of Denzel Aberdeen has been really big for Kentucky to have another guy to go with Oweh. Marino has been good on the glass. Colin Chandler hitting a lot of big shots and being another scorer to go with Aberdeen and Oweh. Kentucky is still not hitting a lot of threes, but they are not turning the ball over as much. They're getting steals and assists, getting a lot of free throws, then hitting the big threes when they have to. Kentucky has looked a lot better the last few games. And that's something I had talked about. It wasn't just the three-point shooting. It wasn't just the three-point shooting was off. It was turning the ball over too much. It wasn't getting the steals on defense. There was low assist numbers. That has been changing lately, and you are having guys step up and make plays when you need to, and Kentucky's playing hurt, but they're playing very well. Aberdeen didn't have a great offensive performance on Saturday, but it didn't matter. You've got guys stepping up, and Otega-Oweh is just so, it's not any revelation to anybody to just say, wow, the guy is really good. If you're a Wildcat fan, you've got to be feeling at least better than earlier in the year. A lot of those losses earlier in the year, we talked about this, were to top-tier competition. And so now that you're playing SEC teams who are good but not great, Kentucky's faring much better. And you got to wonder now, if Kentucky played Alabama again, would that game go the same way? Alabama's not playing anything like they played against Kentucky, and Kentucky's playing much better than what they were playing. We'll see as Kentucky plays some more elite competition. They continue to improve. Now, when I talk about the Tennessee-Alabama game, this was a very close game. And this has been something that I've seen in a lot of Alabama's losses the last several weeks. Alabama shoots threes. They need to hit the threes. That is the Alabama offense. There have been some games lately, especially after the win over Kentucky, that Alabama just is not hitting enough threes. They were 23% from three-point range in this game, 6 for 26. Then they get out-rebounded. Tennessee is going to win the rebounding battle over Alabama. And then Tennessee did not do what they did against Kentucky and turn the ball over, play poor down the stretch, and lose that lead late. Tennessee held on to the lead. Ament had 29 points. Okpara had 8 rebounds. Now, it's going to be very hard for Georgia to beat Tennessee. We talked about Georgia's issue rebounding. We talked about it before they played Florida, and that turned out to be a huge problem, particularly the total rebounding and the offensive rebounding. Tennessee is 4th in offensive rebounds and 8th in rebounding total. Maybe Surreal is enough of a difference if he stays in the game this time, but this is going to be a very difficult matchup for Georgia. Tennessee is a physical team. They play defense. They hit the boards. This is not a good matchup for Georgia, which, by the way, this game is not being played on Tuesday night anymore. This game has been moved to Wednesday night due to all the weather. But the big focal point of the Alabama-Tennessee game was not really the game. It was Charles Bediako playing for Alabama. If you haven't heard of the issue here, Bediako last played for Alabama in 2023. He's been in the NBA G League. NCAA would not let him come back and play in college, but a judge has granted him a temporary restraining order letting him play. The full case has not been decided yet, but this is horrible for college sport. And Nate Oates, coach for Alabama and Alabama's program, claims that it's only fair because supposedly European guys have been permitted to do this while American NBA players have not been permitted to do this. The first time I remember hearing about a situation like this was with Kentucky and Jamal Murray, who had played for the Canadian team. I remember as being a fan of a team that had to play Kentucky, and I felt it was very unfair. He had pro experience, and that showed in the games. He played very well. He was a good player who hit clutch shots. And with how international players have become so involved in college basketball, this is going to continue to become more of a topic. But the issue was getting worse this year. You had James Nagy, who played for FC Barcelona. He was a draft pick in the NBA in 2023, but never played in the NBA. He did play professional in Europe. He was allowed to play for Baylor this year. There's your problem. There is Alabama and Bediako's argument in court. The NCAA says about the Bediako situation that it has to be able to enforce its rules. However, it makes very little sense to allow foreign professional players to play, not NBA players. However, the real controversy with Bediako and why this is drawing even more attention maybe than some of these other players who have recently been allowed to play is that he is the first player who has signed multiple NBA contracts and yet has been allowed to come back and play college basketball. Bediako made a big impact on Saturday. He had 5 dunks, 13 points, 3 rebounds, 2 steals, 2 blocks in the game. He was a force. This is a terrible precedent for college sports. If he can go to the NBA and come back and play, what is stopping guys from all sports from coming back to college? And as the NCAA has said, their argument, this takes opportunities from people who are actually college athletes, not guys who have pro experience, from guys who are going from high school or kids who are in college right now. Instead, we're having what is essentially professional athletes being paid. They're not really students. We heard about this with the Carson Beck situation, whether he was even going to class or not. These kids who have already graduated and are just pretending to be graduate students or whatever, getting paid millions of dollars, are professional athletes playing college sports in their 7th year. This is completely flies in the face of what collegiate sports are supposed to be, which is a way for students, high school students, to have their college paid for. That is what college sports are about, and competing and, yes, developing and getting to the next level. But by and large, college sports is not for making money for the athletes. College sports is so that kids can get scholarships and so that fan bases can enjoy sports. It's not supposed to be a professional situation. College sports is completely spiraling. This has gotten totally out of hand from where we were at, which was, it's not fair. Schools and the NCAA and video game companies can profit off of a player's image and likeness. That's where NIL comes from, name, image, and likeness. So we're going to make it where players can get a cut of that. Okay, well, we're a long way from that. We're a long way from EA Sports making a football game with a player's name, player's image and likeness, and not giving any of it to the player, to where we are right now. This is professional sports. Your reward as a college athlete is that you got a scholarship and that you get to play college sports. I'm okay with players getting paid some. I thought the NCAA is partially to blame for this, for how they were handling certain things. I mean, you had guys basically couldn't have a job. Virtually anything that they did, it was some form of violation. There was no real good way for players. It just kind of turned into a thing where the NCAA was just this jackbooted yet farcical organization that everyone was just mocking about how ridiculous it was that they would come down on athletes for some of these things. I remember there was an athlete that there was a controversy. He was former military, and he had played some form of intramural football on base, serving our country. The NCAA decided that was professional football, and he was not allowed to come play college football when he got out of the military. That's the type of stuff that got us here. The NCAA being that petty and ridiculous. This has reached the point of now NCAA can't enforce its own rules, and it can't stop professional basketball players from turning college basketball into pro sports. If you're a high school athlete trying to get a scholarship, why should the school you want to go to not just go get somebody out of the transfer portal? Why should they not just go get some guy who left 3 years ago and has got pro experience and can come back and make an impact? What's to stop an NFL player who left college after his junior year, got drafted to the NFL, from coming back and playing college football? College sports is out of control. College sports is surviving and is still popular because it is such a good product and because there's so much passion involved in the sport and the fan bases. It is going to be very difficult to kill college sports. However, it is being killed. This is unsustainable, and something that a lot of people don't realize about college sports is college sports historically has not made money. Universities lose money on sports. The only sports that make any money are football for some schools, and for a very small amount of schools, men's basketball. All other sports lose money. So as this becomes a bigger and bigger money thing, and more millions of dollars are being thrown at athletes, and donors are being hit up repeatedly, At what point are the other sports going to suffer? And the idea that these were amateur athletes was mocked by supporters of NIL and paying players. It's not amateur sports, quit acting like it's some pure thing. But now look what we have. There are rules for a reason. It's sure not amateur sports now, is it? And I think if the NCAA and Congress and the universities cannot get together and get this under control, it very well may eventually kill college sports. You cannot allow athletes with professional experience to come back and play against people fresh out of high school. You cannot do it. College sports is for college students. It's for amateur athletes, not professional athletes. Again, I'm not saying there shouldn't be any money for athletes. I'm not saying players should not be able to profit off of their name, image, and likeness, and that they should just be used by the NCAA, by the universities, the TV networks, the video game companies. I'm not saying that. They should be able to get it. We have overcorrected. We have overcorrected severely, and the eligibility situation has gotten totally out of hand because of all these lawsuits. Now we've got guys playing 6, 7, 8 years. It's too long. We have to have a legally binding set of rules for everybody. So that's what I have to say about that, the Bediako situation. Now, a few little points about Major League Baseball I want to say. Congratulations, Andruw Jones finally made the Hall of Fame. Should not have taken 9 votes. It should not have taken till his 9th year to get in the MLB Hall of Fame. And he got less than 79% of the vote. You need 75% to get into the Hall of Fame. I am frustrated with MLB Hall of Fame voting. I understand that it should be exclusive. Not everybody should get in the Hall of Fame. Everybody who was a good player should not get in the Hall of Fame. I do not understand the making guys wait. Oh, he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, right? He's got to wait till his 9th, 10th year on the ballot to get in, and every year gradually having more and more people vote for him. Andruw Jones' first year was single-digit percentage. Andruw Jones is one of 4 players, I talked about this before, in Major League Baseball history with 10 gold gloves and 400 home runs. All the other 3 were Hall of Famers, first ballot Hall of Famers. Andruw Jones has the highest, I'm not a WAR guy, but everybody else apparently is now, had the highest defensive WAR in Major League Baseball history. So by the analytics, he's probably the best defensive player in the history of baseball. To pair with that, he had 400 home runs. In his big stint of most prolonged success, so 1998 to 2006, he had the 3rd highest total WAR of any player in Major League Baseball. The 2 players in front of him, Barry Bonds and Alex Rodriguez, 2 phenomenal players, they both took steroids. Andruw Jones did not take steroids. So non-steroid players, he had the highest WAR in baseball for that period. How can you sit there? Who are the 21, 22% of voters who looked at that, if they even bothered to look at it, who looked at the plays Andruw Jones made, who looked at a guy who routinely had 25 all the way up to 51 home runs, who won 10 gold gloves, who is the greatest defensive player in the history of baseball probably, and said, nah, he's not a Hall of Famer. Who are you? What is a Hall of Famer to you? And the point is not just Andruw Jones. There is only one unanimous Hall of Famer in Major League Baseball Hall of Fame voting. Mariano Rivera is the only unanimous first ballot selection. Of all the great players who have ever played, we couldn't get everybody to agree on a first ballot for any other player. Who is not voting for the Ken Griffey Jr.'s, the Chipper Jones, the Ichiro? Who is not voting for some of these guys on their first ballot? What kind of curmudgeon are you that you think, nah, they can't get in on their first ballot? You know they're getting in. You know you're probably eventually going to vote for them, or at least you should. Why will you not vote for them on the first ballot? It's is ridiculous. I don't understand. This is another one of those like baseball unwritten rules that is silly. Why did it take this long for Andruw Jones to get in the Hall of Fame? So that is my thing. I think more players need to be involved in the voting and less writers. And I think people need to quit abusing this power to hold this over guys, whether or not they are going to get in the Hall of Fame. I mean, I know you have to protect the integrity of it, but if a guy was a great player for over an extended period of time, why are we going to play games with whether or not they get in the Hall of Fame? So it shouldn't take years of campaigns from people demanding that he should be in the Hall of Fame for a guy to get in the Hall of Fame. And a little free agency trade stuff. We recently talked about the situation, needing a salary cap, needing a salary floor, both. There's just been more of it since I talked about it. The Mets, after they signed Bo Bichette, went out and traded for Freddie Peralta. Milwaukee just refuses to spend money. I don't know how they have had the amount of success they have had with spending as little money as they have. And the Mets, bottomless pocketbook. It's the same teams over and over, signing guys, unending money. Baseball needs a salary cap, it needs a salary floor, and it needs to crack down on deferred payments. I'm going to keep saying that. We have to have a situation where there is a realistic possibility that all of the teams could potentially compete. And I keep hearing it. The Dodgers aren't ruining baseball. The Marlins and the Brewers and the Reds, and they're ruining baseball. Yes, there needs to be a salary floor when teams need to be encouraged to spend. They cannot spend with the Dodgers, Yankees, Mets. Okay? They do not make the money. They don't have the money. They don't have the ownership group resources to spend with the Dodgers, Yankees, Mets, Phillies, Blue Jays. They just don't. You're not going to make as much money in Milwaukee and Miami and Cleveland as you are in New York and Los Angeles. So that is a very rich man's fan base type way of looking at it. I'm just going to keep saying this. They can't just print the money, okay? They have to have the money. So we need to be on a level playing field, and we are not currently on a level playing field. I'm saying most of baseball fans are very tired of hearing Dodgers sign, Mets sign, Yankees sign. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of reading it. I'm tired of teams not having a shot at guys. And I mentioned this before. I'm really tired of, we all know Tarek Skubal's not staying with the Tigers. Okay? We all know the team that drafted and developed him isn't going to sign him. That's not the way baseball should be. That is not the way baseball should be. Yeah, these guys should be able to go out and make money. Teams should have a chance to sign their own guy. And on that note, a big bravo to the Guardians and Jose Ramirez for choosing to stay in Cleveland. No telling how much money this guy could have got somewhere else. He's one of the best players in all of baseball. Who knows how much the Dodgers would have offered him? $1 billion? I mean, who knows? But he chose to stay in Cleveland. Good on you. Good on Cleveland for re-signing him. Okay, so that's all we have today for this show. If you enjoyed it, please follow, subscribe. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and be sure to like it, share it, comment. We love hearing from people on this show, and hope you'll tune in next time.